We have to get clear on where you are. This is why I said being honest is so important and not living in delusion. Let's just be honest about where you are, okay? The second part of that, we're going to jump to figuring out where you want to go, okay? Being clear and specific where you actually want to go. What do you want to accomplish in 2024? And then at the end, we're going to be figuring out your success process for this year. It's just that simple. Being honest about where we are, where your starting point is today, the current version of you, and then figuring out where you want to go, what do you want to accomplish, and then in the middle, your success process. Now, here's where the faith part comes in. We're doing all this based on Proverbs 16:3. Commit your actions to the Lord, and he will cause them to succeed. Now, let me be honest with you. The first word of this verse is where a lot of us get it messed up, because nobody wants to commit to anything anymore. Because everyone wants instant gratification. Nobody actually wants to actually put in some sweat equity for anything, right? We just want stuff to happen. But let me tell you right now, and you wouldn't be in this room if you didn't already know this, but let me just make sure, anything that is worth having is hard to get. So you got to be willing to commit to something. Now, commit your actions. This is our responsibility. This is our responsibility. So we can be in faith for a thing, but God is still going to require us to put something in on the investment, right? So we have to make sure that we're doing our part, right? How many of you familiar with the 80-20 rule, right? Let me give you a framework to help you understand. Think of it as your goal is the 100%. 80% of it is your job. That's what you should be committing to. The 20% that is unknown, that's God's responsibility. But too often, people are worried about God's 20% instead of focusing on their 80%. And then when they only put in 60%, or even worse, 30%, they're wondering, God, why didn't you do it? God must not be looking out for me. And God's like, you didn't even do your part. Right? So when we think about this, commit your actions to the Lord, that's where we just do our 80% and we leave the rest to God. The only thing we're responsible for is our 80%. Instead of focusing on the 20%, that is God's responsibility. And if you actually believe that he's going to fulfill his promises to you, you shouldn't be thinking about that in the first place, right? So that's what you should be focusing on. We're committing our actions to the Lord, and then he will cause them to succeed. That extra 20%, that's where God does the work. Again, the only thing you're responsible for is committing your actions, okay? So, like I said, we're in the Define Your Dream session. And I want to teach you guys a principle that has absolutely changed my life, and I believe it'll help you out as well. And that principle is the be, do, have principle. Okay? How many of you have heard this before? Be, do, have. Okay? For those of you that are unfamiliar, we're basically going to reverse engineer this. Think of have as just the things you want, the resources you want, the cars, the house, like whatever the thing is, right? Resources, that's what have is. Okay? Now, in order to have the things that you want to have, there are some things that you're going to have to do. Follow me? The things that you need to do, that's your activity. That's dealing with whatever your job is, your skills, your knowledge, things of that nature that allow you to have the things. But too often, people stop at do. They think, oh, well, as long as I do fill in the blank, I'll get it. But the truth is they ignore the last part, which is the deepest part, which is the be. Because ultimately, we're human beings, not human doings, not human havings. We're human beings. And so when you think about the being category, that's where we're talking about your productivity. That's where we're talking about your mindset. Now, how many of you have heard, if you want to improve your life, improve your mindset, right? That's common. We've heard that before, right? But let me break down mindset to you in just a way that might make sense to you. Your mindset is basically made up of your beliefs, your behaviors, and your emotions. That's your mindset. Beliefs, just what you believe is true, your behaviors, how you respond to situations, what you do in response to things, and then your emotions. That's basically the glue that holds it all together. That's your mindset. So when you're thinking about this upcoming year, you need to be thinking about, okay, what do I believe is true? How do I currently behave? And then where am I at with my emotions? Because I can promise you, until you get those three things under control, and we haven't even touched productivity yet, your B is going to be jacked up, so you'll never be able to do what you got to do so you can have what you want to have. And that's why we have to be honest, okay? Being is where your habits are. You want to lose 60 pounds this year, but you don't have a habit of just getting up and going to the gym even when you don't feel like it, it's not going to happen. But it's not until you get clear on, okay, this is just what I have to commit to. And that's why I like the word commitment, because it's not about feelings. And that's where a lot of people get it messed up, where they're like, oh, I have to feel a certain way to do a certain thing. No, you just got to do it. Because when you set a goal that really matters to you, it shouldn't matter how you feel, because you understand this is what I want to accomplish, because I understand it's bigger than me. So this principle, be, do, have. All right, everyone got it? So now, when we're thinking about the commitments that we're making, when you're actually setting the goals, these are the 3 criteria I want you to follow. Number 1, I want it to be spirit-centered. I want it to be spirit-centered. What does that mean? That means you can set a goal, but if your goal and God's goal don't match, your goal is never going to work. God does leave us room to be ambitious. However, if you're trying to be ambitious in an area that is totally against or just the opposite direction of what he has for you, it's not going to work. Okay? What does this look like practically when a goal is spirit-centered? Whenever you go to sleep at night and you're just like, man, I really want to do that thing. Like, I would really like it. Like, that'd be really nice. Like, whatever that feeling inside, that pit in the center of your stomach that you're like, oh, I really want to go for it. I really have no point of reference for it. I've never seen anyone else in my family do it, but like, I really want to do that thing. That's when you know it's a spirit-centered goal. So you already got that down. Next thing, I want you to make it specific. Don't just say, oh, I want to do better in 2024. What does that mean? You want to do better at what? All I'm saying, you telling me you're going to be a better liar or something. I don't know what that means. What does better mean? Right? We want to be specific. If you want to start a business, how much do you want to make in that first year? If you want to lose weight, how many pounds? Like, be specific. Because again, if you truly believe that God's able to do whatever you commit to him, you should have the confidence to make it a specific goal. We're not even focusing on how. Don't even think about the how yet on this part. If you know in your heart, you know, I really want to do fill in the blank, you should have the confidence to make it specific. But then lastly, it should be scary to you. It should make you uncomfortable. If it's a goal that you're just like, I mean, I could knock that out in the first quarter, no problem, it's not big enough. Because if we serve a God that is going to be, that's able to give us exceedingly abundantly above, right? I'm saying we quote all this stuff in church where it gives us like a shot of adrenaline, but then we go home to our normal lives and we're just living the same subpar lives. Like, that's why I said, like, this isn't church. Like, we're here to do some work. And I'm not telling you not to go to church. Let me be clear. Yeah, go to church tomorrow. But if you're ready to live an above average life, this is how you have to start setting your goals. Every goal you set needs to be spirit-centered. Don't do it if God ain't called you to it. Let me tell you, entrepreneurship is ghetto. Don't do it if you ain't called to it. But if God's called you to it, then you be specific, and it's scary. But if whatever God's calling you to do, you do that. Make it specific. And then make sure that it's scary. Make sure it is at a level that you're like, I don't know how it's going to happen, but I'm just going to commit my actions and I'm going to leave that 20% to God to handle. Okay? So, you guys are going to set 3 goals today. You're going to set a personal goal, you're going to set a professional goal, and then you're going to set a financial goal. Okay? And it's going to follow that same framework. It's going to follow something that's spirit-centered, right? God, what are you leading me to do in the area of my personal life? God, what are you leading me to do in the area of my professional life, my work? God, what are you leading me to do financially? Whatever it may be. You're going to write that down. Got to get some music. Done? All right, so look, everything that you just wrote down, I want you to understand it's not just a goal. This is a commitment. This is not a commitment for your boss. This is not a commitment for your significant other. This is a commitment to you. This is a commitment to you for this upcoming year. Because let me tell you, there is nothing that you cannot do. God designed us that way. But the problem is, too many of us allow our greatness to be suppressed. There's a difference between your greatness being created versus your greatness being discovered. Because I can tell you, your greatness is already there. But what happens is life just adds layers to it to the point where you don't even recognize it anymore. You don't even know how to use it anymore. So the next thing you know, you just feel like it doesn't even exist. But it says in the Bible that I knew you before you were formed in your mother's womb. But it also says in the Bible that I've given you a hope and a future. So if we really believe that, then that means we have to be willing to peel back the layers, because we understand my life may be one way now, but I do know that if I follow God's plan for me and I do what he's called me to do, like not just do what he called me to do in terms of, okay, I pray every day, okay, I go to church where I'm supposed to go to church. I mean, like, you really do what you're supposed to do, right? The other stuff, the Monday through Saturday stuff, not just the stuff on Sunday mornings, right? When you do those things, that's when you're going to find success. Because I can tell you, each and every one of us here has two superpowers. You guys ready for them? Two superpowers. You ready? Number one, expectation. Expectation is your greatest superpower, because you know what expectation does? When I expect to win, I will do everything that's necessary, because that's the only result I'm expecting to see. Not just guessing at it. So everyone that does the whole going with the flow of life and we'll see what happens, no. What's your expectation? If you expect something to work, then you do everything you're supposed to do to make it work. Do your 80%. But see, the problem is, and I said this earlier, we only do 30% because, well, you know, I felt off that day. We do 60% because I was a little tired. But then we're wondering why we aren't living the life that we're supposed to live. And by the activity that we saw, there's a lot of opportunities missed. But how many of those opportunities were missed based off of temporary emotions? So when you think about everything that you just wrote down, understand your expectation is a superpower, but you have to make sure that your actions match that expectation, because that's where disappointment happens. And it's nobody else's fault but yours. If something don't work, if you expect one thing to happen one way, but you don't do what you're supposed to do, that is only your fault. Don't blame God. Don't blame your parents. Don't blame your friends. That is you. Because ultimately, in this thing called life, if you can't honor your own word, it'll be tough. It'll be tough. So whom much is given, much is required. So understand, your expectation is your superpower. Now, along with that, because sometimes life happens, adaptability is your second superpower. Adaptability. Just because you run into one obstacle does not mean the entire plan has been shot, does not mean that all is lost. Adapt. If you really believe what it says in James, to count all trials as joy because it's the perfecting of your faith, so you will end up perfect, needing nothing. If you actually believe that, you're not going to let anything stop you. To the point where when you know you do your 80% and it maybe still doesn't work, then you can have confidence in just saying, all right, God, maybe the plan changed. But you can have peace in that, as opposed to being in turmoil because it didn't work out. But again, that only starts when we do our part. So you have to be adaptable. Don't have a fixed mindset where everything has to be done a certain way. We're in a time now where you can literally work from home. Before you know it, they're going to have cars flying. Life is changing all around us. So if you think what worked in 2018 is going to work today, it's not. The way businesses are run, totally different, whether you're an entrepreneur or you're in the corporate space. They got machines that can replace you. That's just a fact. That ain't, I don't matter how you feel about it, that's a fact. So you got to be adaptable. So have your expectation, but then I need you to be adaptable, because understand, whatever you wrote down, that's a commitment to you. So as we go through the rest of the day, this is laying the groundwork for the entire day. Understand that I don't want you thinking from who you are today. I want you to think from the best version of yourself in that B category that we talked about earlier, where you understand really who you are and what you're capable of. Because it's only then when you start adopting that mindset that you're actually going to start seeing things change in your life. Because the whole time, I promise you, God's just like, I'm waiting to bless you, but I'm waiting for you to become the person that is worthy of the blessing. Because it says in the Bible that he gives seed to the sower. So that means you have to be a sower before you even have the seed. But too often we're complaining why we don't have a seed, even though we're not a sower. It's your responsibility. Your responsibility. Who are you going to become in 2024 so you can do the things you need to do so you can have what you want to have?